In approximately 72 hours, these girls are gonna have the most shocking and gruesome experience of their lives. And they're not even gonna have the time to experience it because it's gonna happen so fast, and it's gonna happen because of someone right here in this crowd. Now, I told you this next story was gonna be a lot more darker than the first. Like, you have no idea how disturbing this one gets. But without further ado, I'm Mr. Nobody, and this is Mystery Dismantold. Richard Samuel Alden McCroskey, known as Sam for short, is a 20-year-old young man from Castro Valley, California. Now, Sam lives with his father and older sister Sarah, and at home and around his neighborhood, he was known as a very shy and quiet young man. The kind of person who never fought back when he was bullied, and he got bullied a lot, so much so that he had to drop out of high school for that, twice. But on social media, on the other hand, Sam was a totally different person. He was a graphic designer and a web designer, but he was also heavily into a subgenre of music called horrorcore, and some months prior, he had really started to pursue his decade-long passion for it, dropping songs and making videos on his YouTube channel, where he went by the name Lil Demon Dog. He was really starting to gain some traction, and he went by the stage name Syco Sam. Now, horrorcore music is a subgenre of rap and heavy metal that glorifies, amongst many other things, hate on religion, hardcore violence, Satanism, gore, hate on Christians, anything with a lot of shock value. It's a really dark type of music, and Sam was a huge part of that. He also had a MySpace account, and it was on MySpace that he spent a huge chunk of his waking hours just chatting away with his long-distance girlfriend, Emma. Emma, just like Sam, was a huge fan of horrorcore music. She was only 16 and the daughter of a reverend, but at the time, she had been to a lot of horrorcore music concerts and was well known within the community. She lived in Farmville, West Virginia with her mother, Dr. Deborah Kelly, an associate professor of sociology and criminal justice studies at Longwood University. Richard and Emma had met at a horrorcore concert near San Diego in September of 2008, and they had just quickly fallen for each other. After they parted ways though, they continued their relationship over calls and chats on MySpace. They spent a lot of time together just talking on phone and chatting on MySpace, exchanging pictures and videos, being that they lived at pretty much opposite ends of the country. But all that was about to change, albeit for a short period of time, because on the 12th of September of 2009, there was going to be a horrorcore festival at Southgate, Michigan. It was the Strictly for the Wicked festival, and Emma and Richard were going to be there. Now, they were very excited. They were finally going to meet each other again after more or less 365 days of long-distance relationship, and they were stoked. It was like Christmas in September for them. They prepared for it for months. Now, the trip was a sweet getaway for Sam, who had been devastated when his dad kicked his mom out of their home 5 months earlier. So his music career and his relationship with Emma and the trip just kind of made him forget all about his problems for a bit. The plan was that Sam was going to fly to California a few days before the concert and stay over at Emma's place for the time he was going to be there. So he flew into West Virginia on the 6th of September, and he lived at Emma's house with Emma and her mom and Emma's best friend, 18-year-old Melanie Wells. Melanie had also traveled to Emma's house that day from Inwood, where she lived, with her parents, and she was at Emma's house for the concerts. Melanie was just as heavily invested in horrorcore as Emma was. The girls had also met on MySpace and had bonded over their love for horrorcore music and their hatred for Christianity. Pretty ironic as both their dads were preachers. But the three of them all stayed at Emma's mom's house for the time leading to the event, which was scheduled for Saturday the 12th of September. It was about a 10-hour drive from Emma's house to the destination. Emma's parents had been divorced for about 9 months at a time, and before then, Emma's mom had been the one driving Emma and Melanie to the other horrorcore events that they'd been to before. But for whatever reason, this time, her dad was going to drive them, perhaps in a bid to be more involved in his daughter's life. But whatever the case may be, there's little information as to what might have happened during the days leading to the event. But on the day of the event, they all fell into Emma's dad's car, and he drove the three of them plus Emma's mom, so 4 of them and 5 of them in total, all the way to the concert. The parents dropped the kids at the concert while they went out into the city to spend the day. Now, based on footages from the concert, Emma and Melanie were having a great time. They were vibing to the artist, catching up with friends, and just overall getting what they went there for. But Sam, on the other hand, He was mostly seen in the dark and at other times taking photos and videos of the event. Now, I'm not saying that he wasn't having a good time, but he appeared to be more busy. According to some sources, as soon as Emma saw Sam at the airport the day he arrived, she was just disappointed. He looked very different from what she had expected, in a bad way, and he came off as shy and immature, and that just didn't really sit well with her at all. So she did her best to avoid him, and she was chatting and flirting with other guys all through his stay and all through the concert. And at some point during the concert, they get into an argument and she breaks up with him. Now, based on the sources that I explored, there's only a bit of this side of the story that I could verify, and I couldn't really find a lot of information to support most of it. But a lot of this story is based on third-person account, as those who experienced it firsthand didn't really get the chance to tell their sides. But whatever the case may be, Sam was pissed. Their relationship clearly wasn't going the way he had expected, and he was totally distraught about this. Perhaps he had expected a more exclusive, picture-perfect relationship with Emma, or perhaps maybe it was something else, but at about 72 hours after the concert, he would snap, and in the worst way. Now, the story gets very disturbing from here on, so again, viewer discretion is advised. Emma's dad drove them back home that night, and they arrived in the wee hours of Sunday, September the 13th, before he made his way to his own house. As of 3 a.m. on Tuesday, September the 15th, so roughly 3 nights since the concert, Sam was still seething with rage. The events had transpired from the days after the party, and why he was still at Emma's house even though they allegedly broke up is pretty much a mystery. But what we do know is that sometime around 3 a.m. that night, while all the ladies slept, Sam would get up from the downstairs bedroom he occupied and fumble around. He finds a ball-peen hammer, and he slowly and quietly makes his way to the couch where Melanie slept. Whether or not she was asleep is unknown, but as soon as he finds her, he goes to town on her, beating her on the head with a hammer as hard as he could. And when he was satisfied, he makes his way upstairs to Emma's mom's bedroom, and he does the same thing. And when he was done, he goes downstairs to Emma's bedroom, and again, he beats her with a hammer till she was lifeless. He murdered all 3 women within a short period of time as they slept, without them even screaming or fighting back, and most likely not even realizing what was going on. At some point after all this, he calls his sister to check up on his family and to tell her that he loved them. Now, his sister found this very strange because it wasn't something that he ever said to each other. He also makes a video where he acknowledges that he was going to pay for his crime, and he was also contemplating ending his life. Now, Melanie's parents were supposed to pick her up on the 16th, and being that they hadn't really heard much from her or Emma's mom, they were a bit concerned. So, on that day, Melanie's dad drives all the way to Emma's house to get her, but there was no one answering the door, and it appeared that there was no one in the house. So he had this sinking feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't like any of them to go on for days without communicating. It was the 3rd time that Melanie was visiting Emma, and the 1st time that any of them would go on for more than 24 hours without even a phone call. So he waits outside Emma's house, occasionally knocking on the doors and peering through the windows, but still, there was no sign of anyone. So after waiting for about 7 hours, he leaves. The next day, still without hearing a word from Melanie or Emma's mom, Caitlin, Melanie's mom, called the police, and she asked them to go do a welfare check on Emma's house. She had called the house on 2 different occasions, and she had spoken with Sam, but both times, he had given her different stories, and that got her even more worried and a bit suspicious. On getting to the house, Sam answers the door, and he tells the policeman that he was Emma's boyfriend. When asked about the ladies, he tells them that they were out to see a movie and that their car had broken down and that their battery had run out, but that everything was fine. Now, mind you, this was almost midnight and more than 20 hours after the killings, but for whatever reason, the police didn't find anything to be suspicious or concerned about, and they just left. The next day, which was Thursday, September the 17th, Caitlin, now even more worried, calls Emma's dad and asks him to go check on the ladies. Emma's dad assures her that he'll do that and that everything will be fine, and so he drives to the house. But on getting there, somehow, Sam grabs a wood-splitting maul and he beats the man to death with it in the living room. Then he gathers all three bodies downstairs and he puts them in Emma's bedroom. And in the early hours of the next morning, he steals Emma's dad's car and money from his wallet and he just makes a run for it. Somewhere on the way, he gets the car stuck in a ditch and neighbors call the police. Now mind you, this was around 4 a.m. on the morning of Friday, September the 18th. So roughly 72 hours since he killed the ladies. And he was still wearing the same hoodie he had been wearing since the concert. And according to some sources, there were chunks of flesh and blood on him, and he stunk like the devil. But the police didn't have any issue with him. The police just issued him a summons for driving without a license, even though he told them that the car belonged to his girlfriend's dad. And they called a tow truck to tow the car, and the tow truck driver also gave him a ride to a convenience store a couple of miles away from where he bought some new things and later boarded a car to the airport. On getting to the airport, he tries to board a quick flight back to California, but being that the express ticket was more than he could afford, he decided to spend the night at the airport and board the next flight to California the next day. Now, at one point or another during the escape, he calls one of his friends and tells him about what he had done. That friend would later go on to report it to the police. Meanwhile, Caitlin, who still hadn't heard from Melanie or Emma or Emma's mom or even Mark, was now extremely worried. It had been a day since she last spoke with Mark, so she called the police again and asked them again for a welfare check. At some time past 5 p.m. that day, she and her husband would go to the police station to file a missing person report. After getting the tip from Sam's friend, the police goes to the house at 3 p.m. that same day, so roughly 2 hours before the parents filed their missing person report. And from a distance, they could just perceive the putrid odor of rotten flesh, and on entering the house, they discovered the decomposing remains of the 4 victims. The 3 ladies were so badly decomposed that they couldn't be recognized. They could only be identified through their dental records. The scene was so grotesque, the police couldn't even describe it. They quickly started a manhunt on Sam. He had earlier told the policeman who had issued him a summons that he was going to be traveling to California. So the police, they knew where to look, and they just go straight to the airport to look for him. At about 11:30 a.m. on Saturday the 19th of September 2009, Sam was arrested at Richmond Airport. He was found sleeping on the chair at the baggage claim area while waiting for his flight. He later pleaded guilty to 4 counts of homicide, and he took a plea deal that helped him escape the death penalty. And he was subsequently sentenced to life in prison. At the time of his arrest, he had no previous criminal records. Here's his mugshot. As of June 2024, he's still serving his sentence at Wallens Ridge State Prison in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. Now here's a quick snippet of one of his songs. So that'll do it for now. Till next time, stay sharp and take care.